everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. As you can see in the title, we've got a guest, and we'll get to them very shortly. But before we get to that, Magical Learning is a facilitation company that's been running for over 25 years and partnered with global thought leaders like John Mattone and Robin Sharma. We've now crossed over 300 podcast episodes, and we're happy to be doing it with this guest today. So I guess before we get into anything, Sophie, how are you going this week? How's things been?
Really good, Jez. And it made me giggle because when we booked this podcast episode, I was like, oh, my husband's name's Jeremy. And then you said, oh, I'm Jez. And I'm like, we call him Jez too. So it feels like this level of familiarity already starting into the podcast. But no, the week's been great. Really, really busy. But all the good things with family and life. So yeah.
Well, that's good. It's always good to meet another Jez as well. It's a shame he can't be on the podcast, but, maybe in a future podcast we can have him on as a double. But Sophie, I think importantly today, we're getting to meet you on the Magical Learning Podcast, and you're an amazing person because I feel like, are very aligned with kind of things that we like to do here at Magical Learning. So not only are you a writer, which we love to have on, and we'll get to your new book shortly, not only are you a speaker, but you're also a self-kindness expert, and you are the founder of Meta Leaders. So self-kindness, that's something we love here at Magical Learning. We think that's incredibly important. So very lucky to be talking to you today. But you are also, as I mentioned, the author of the new book, The Kind Way, which is very exciting. So you want to tell us a little bit about yourself there?
Gosh, there's so much to unpack in that intro, isn't there? Thanks. That's I honestly, this authorship journey is a little almost like an out-of-body experience. I was talking to my publisher yesterday and we were discussing how, you can write the book, you can publish a book, you can hold the book, you can talk to people about the book, but there's kind of this disassociation of, oh my goodness, that is a book and I did write that and it is in the flesh and it is something that I've created. So the book that I've written is specifically around how to mostly take care of yourself as a leader. So leading from a place of self-kindness so that you can lead yourself and others in a more aligned and congruent manner. The book itself has a framework which I've created. So I've trademarked that. If you go down the rabbit hole on some of my my work, you'll see that I had to change my framework after having already written my book because I had a trademarking situation with someone else taking my framework. But the new framework is much more impactful, I feel, and much more useful. So I'm an HR consultant. That's my day job, I suppose. And then on the side of that, I'm a mum with two boys, 12 and 9. My hubby's a police officer, so he has been in the job for about 20 years. And so this book was driven from a place of me wanting to take care of myself better, wanting to be able to support my husband in the work that he does, but also to bring up our kids to be just the best kind of humans that they can possibly be. So, yeah.
Well, that's great because, we've got a question from Marg who always likes to sort of reflect on the family element of this, which is great because we love bringing business elements into life as well. That's a core part of what we like to do here at Magical Learning. So very excited to have you on, Sophie.
Thank you.
And I actually think that that's a great place to kind of start is with Danette's question here because I think that kind of tees us up kind of nicely to get some definitions. Danette loves a definition. And so we'll start here. Danette's written, I love to start with definitions. So my first question is, what is kindness?
Kindness is this really interesting word and concept that people seem to have their own definition of what they think it is. But true kindness for me, so I guess my definition and what I've drawn on from my experience in work and life is that it is being able to have difficult conversations, being able to stand in your values authentically and in a grounded and congruent manner. It's the ability to take care of yourself and set boundaries around what you will and won't accept and how you treat other people. So are you treating people in an empathetic, compassionate and supportive manner while also holding your own, values and self-worth and well-being at the core of that? So for me, it's quite a broad concept. And I think a lot of people get confused between niceness and kindness. Niceness for me is when people just accept the status quo. They don't speak up for themselves. They don't speak up for other people. They maybe accept things that don't feel really good in their own body or that are good for themselves. Kindness is more about standing up for yourself and standing up for others, but doing it in a very empathetic and supportive manner.
Wow, and what a great place to start there, because I think a lot of people will be thinking niceness and kindness are probably synonyms for each other, but you're showing here there's actually a huge difference,
Difference. Yeah.
which is really, yeah, which is really interesting. Well, let's get to the next second question here, and then we can maybe unpack a little bit more, which is how do we bring a bit more of it to work and life every day? That's kindness she's talking about there.
Mm. I think by knowing yourself well enough to show up as a version of yourself that you are comfortable and happy to be, and that you are consistent in that version of who you are. So you show up as yourself in every situation, whether that's at work, whether that's at home, whether you're standing on a stage, whether you're going for a walk, who you are at your core humanity is actually how you're showing up in everything that you're doing. So being kind to yourself first is making sure that you're well enough to be able to show up as a happy and healthy version of yourself. And then that gives you the ability to hold space for others and support them through whatever they might need support through, or to be able to spend time with people and have the ability to laugh and have fun and be energized and that kind of thing. So I think if we're looking at how we can bring more of it into our lives, it's how do we know ourselves well enough to know what we need first, so that then we can give out more to the people around us and the situations that we're in.
Yeah, wow. So I think that that's a great place to start. The self kindness being out is the place to begin to create it as an external thing that you can sort of give out, I guess.
Yeah.
And I guess, Sophie, to be honest, with the conversation we've already had, I've got to ask you the question. You know, you're juggling so many different things. Like we were just talking before, there's so many different elements. I said a few, then you added some because there were so many going on. I
Yeah.
guess my question is, how are you able to bring some of that self-kindness to yourself, to be able to give kindness out when you've got literally so much going on? We were talking about stuff before the podcast, you know, of just the scheduling stuff you've got going on. So yeah, tell us a little bit about how you approach it.
I have really, really strong boundaries. So that's something that I've had to learn. It's a learned behavior. It's not something that I think that we're often brought up to focus on or to understand how we can set boundaries, but in a clear, consistent, and kind manner. So I am quite rigorous about having my morning coffee. We were talking about caffeine earlier. I live my best life when I'm caffeinated, and everyone around me is much happier as well. So it can start with the most simple of things. I mean, you don't have to, be so regimented about everything that you're doing that you're not letting anybody in, or you're not able to flex and bend and change and adapt around priorities. But I think for me, boundaries has been the biggest thing that has enabled me to, when I'm not feeling well or I'm feeling tired, I make sure that I step back and have a rest, or I get out in nature. Every single day, you can see behind me, I also bring nature into the house. I do also, you can see a lot of reading, and traveling. So the thing for me is creating that spaciousness in my life to do the things that will refill my energetic tank and allow me to, and I'm not perfect. Gosh, I have my rough days where I'm grumpy or I snap at someone, or the kids aren't getting their shoes on quick enough for school or whatever. No one's perfect, and I think there's that piece of understanding that we're all human and we're all going to have bad days or hard times. It's just how we can make sure that we have that buffer, cumulative impact, to create that buffer for us when things get a little bit challenging or tiring.
Yeah, wow. Okay, well, that's that. See, that tees us up actually really nicely for my question, which I've written in here because I think it sort of talks about managing energy as well. And
Yeah.
I guess what I wanted to talk about here, because you've given us a really good framework there, is my question here is you talk in the book about managing energy, something that I struggle with a little bit. I would love to know how you begin noticing energy as a problem for some people, and what ways are best to manage it. But I was just sort of also going to ask this from the perspective of you seem to have done a really good job of being able to create space where you know what helps you relax. So I guess a second part to that question would be, how did you learn about what actually helps you energize?
I probably learnt through a combination of failing miserably at keeping myself well. Often our biggest challenges become our biggest opportunities for learning, don't they? And so I think I definitely, I mean, I'm, 40, what am I, 46 now, heading for 47. And I think you sort of hit 40 and you realize, and I've spoken to a lot of friends about this as well who are in a similar age bracket, you sort of hit that midlife period where you go, what are the things that are making me feel good? What are the things that don't make me feel so good? Who are the people and the situations that energize me? And who are the people and the situations that take that energy away from me? And it's about really consciously making those decisions around, I'm going to spend time with these people over here because I feel great when I'm with them. I may not cut these people out, but I'm going to spend less time with them or give them less energy when I'm with them. So there was that learning piece around, life happens. Often we will break in ways that we don't think that we're going to break, or things happen and they come out of the blue and we have to navigate those challenges. So it's learning through those. What did I, that reflection piece, what did I do? What did I not do? What could I have done more of? What could I have done less of? And so really taking the time to do that, I guess that audit, that self-audit on what makes me feel good? Why does it make me feel good? Why doesn't it make me feel good? And what takes energy away from me in these situations? And I think we don't often, we're speaking about spaciousness. Even in life and work, we don't allow ourselves that space to self-reflect. So even today, like I've got my journal here sitting while we're chatting, because there might be something that comes up that I go, oh, I just really want to take a note of that and sit down and reflect on that later. So when we're talking about how do we best manage our energy, I think it's firstly becoming aware of the things that energize us and the things that take the energy away. And then how do we create more opportunity for the things that energize us, whatever that might be. It might be that you want to spend time with people and you're not getting enough connection. But for me, I love people, but I love also being on my own and having that space.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. That really, it's such an interesting concept that you've gone there. The amount, it's sort of finding energy through reflection. Like you almost kind of have to go through and then do like analysis and go
Yeah.
yes or no. But it's interesting that you're talking about sort of this reflection, and then that's giving you this like sort of deeper, better understanding. Is I saw a kind of freaky video this week that was about this person who had sort of put a webcam and given it two little legs, and he sort of connected it to AI,
Oh,
and he
wow.
essentially and so he basically created this little R2D2 that could like sort of taught itself to walk and things like that,
Yeah.
and could respond to stuff. It was a little freaky, I'm going to be honest, but what was interesting about it was to make it better. At the end of every day, what it would do is it would take all the data that it took throughout the day, and then it would go and summarize it, and then that would be their sort of learning. So it would basically, like, it was what it equivalent of a dream is, like it just essentially
Yes.
ripping down the main info, and then so that it has less storage space to keep up that info, which is not
Yeah.
perfect, but it's sort of similar to, I guess,
Yeah.
what you're talking about there, which is like it's looking at what's working, what's not working, and then it's essentially being able to create a shortcut version of what is working through
Yeah.
all the not working, and then it helps itself for the next day. So yeah, that's kind of what's made me think of there. I don't know how
That
that
No,
feel.
that's interesting. No, I really like that because it's, that might be the artificial intelligence, side of things. But I think that we're getting so busy, and I often say to people, we're hyper connected, but feeling really, really disconnected and isolated at the same time. So there's this weird paradox of we are online all the time. Everybody expects everything, very, very quickly. Emails are pinging in our inbox. In fact, I've shut my email down today so that no email notifications were coming through, even though I've got them silenced, they still pop up. Our phones are in our hands. We don't look at people in the eyes as much as we used to. I'm even seeing it with my 12-year-old. The kids are on the bus and they've got their faces in phones. And so I think that, that's that spaciousness that we used to have before technology was such a big part of our lives, which I think technology is amazing. I mean, we wouldn't be able to do things like this if we didn't have it. But I think there's that beautiful balance of I'm happy to keep going through the day, keep pushing, but at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day, either starting with how am I wanting to show up today? What's the kind of activities that I want to do? Who are the people I want to be around? If I'm going to have a difficult interaction, how do I want to show up within that interaction? And so setting yourself up for success at the start of the day. I'm not a morning person, so I'm probably better at the reflective piece. So I run on caffeine and not much sleep. So I'm a late night person, but my best friend is the opposite. So she'll do a reflection piece in the morning and I'll do one in the afternoon. And so I think it's just about finding ways that work for you to create that space in your life.
Yeah, and I mean, I do want to go back to the regular questions, but you're really touching on some really interesting things here, and I just like
Mm.
just to sort of touch on it once more is like we're talking about a sort of, in some ways, with a level of technology, which does give us the benefit of being able to do this, but it does make people feel a little more disconnected, even in a day-to-day life. And you're talking a lot about internal connection, really listening to something that you have to be so free of distraction to be able to do. Like what you're describing is so, it to me is very clear. You're creating these spaces that give you the space to then learn what actually works for you, and then you can kind of take that forward.
Put it into practice,
But I guess, yeah, have you had a journey of having to go from a level of disconnection to being able to be more connected to yourself?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've worked in HR nearly for 20 years. Gosh, that sounds a long time, doesn't it? Makes me feel really old saying it out loud. And I think in that process, I was quite heavily, well, I think when I say disconnected from myself, I probably didn't know myself as well as I know myself now. And so I think there's two different parts to disconnection. There's the part where you potentially don't really know who you are, so you bend and morph and adapt and try and fit into where you think you should fit. And there's that word should, which I really don't like, but we use it so much in our day-to-day of, I should be this, or I should do that, or I should go and see that person, or I should achieve this, and I think there's that piece of, maybe we don't know who we are to start with. And so there's a disconnect piece in that, because you're portraying something that's actually not intrinsically aligned with who you could be or you are at your core if you took time to know yourself better. And then there's the piece around, are we disconnecting from ourselves by staying too busy, by numbing, by using whatever means that might be. And a lot of people use social media to numb, and they don't even really realize that they're just kind of scrolling. And I do that sometimes still, like, honestly. And as I said earlier, I'm human. We're all human. And I catch myself and go, oh, what have you been doing? You've wasted an hour. You've lost an hour of your time, and you've done nothing. But I think there's two pieces of disconnect. Do we know ourselves well enough, first of all, to be putting ourselves authentically forward? Or do we know ourselves, but we don't like certain parts, or we're so busy and we don't really want to sit with those feelings, and maybe it's a bit uncomfortable, so we'd rather disconnect from that with others, and it's easier just to kind of go with the flow.
Yeah, well, I still want to keep going down this rabbit hole, but we've got to go back to some of the team's questions here. So let's go. Let's go to
Interesting
Graham.
topic, though, isn't it?
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's like, to me, there's such clear connections. I'm starting to see like a bit like I can understand how this all fits together. So that's great. But I think Graham's question offers an interesting concept here, which is kindness seems to flow out of some people, but seems stuck behind a wall in others. Do some people have a predisposition to kindness, and does someone's normal mood affect their ability to be kind?
That's such a big question, and I love it, actually. And I absolutely think that Graham's right, that some people appear to be kinder than others. I think what we often find in some people is they have a genuine predisposition to being either optimistic and warm and people, or some people just aren't people and probably not overly interested in giving out to other people and being generous with themselves. And so, yeah, I do really think that there probably is a part of some people that looks like it might be more kind. Do I think that people who are not overly people can be kind? Absolutely. Because I think there's parts of kindness that are absolutely learned behaviors rather than intrinsic kind of genetic predisposition to a particular style of personality. So I like his question there around does someone's normal mood affect their ability to be kind? I think when we're talking about normal moods, I think there are so many factors that impact a mood in general. So, is the person sleeping well enough? So, have they not had enough sleep? I know when I don't get enough sleep, I'm like a cranky bear. And my children are too, my 9-year-old, when he's hungry, he gets hangry. So, what are the factors in our lives that are impacting what could be taken as our normal mood? Or is someone just generally showing up in life as a very unhappy, unpleasant human? And I tend to feel a bit sorry for those people. If you've got people who are not showing up in a very generous manner, they're either probably not taking very good care of themselves. Firstly, they might not think very highly of themselves, so it's often masking a lower self-esteem. And I think some people have things that happen to them in their life that generate those feelings of unworthiness and maybe just general unhappiness. And so, yeah, I think someone's mood absolutely impacts their ability to be kind, but also their capacity and energy levels will absolutely, as we were speaking before, will impact their ability to be kind as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, even to your kind of point here, I think it can sometimes kindness might be it can sometimes look a bit blurry and it can look like
Mm.
unkindness, I guess, because I'm
Mm.
just thinking of, when I'm thinking of people that might not look kind, but they are actually kind of doing a kind thing. Like you think of like, say you're on public transport and someone's playing music really loudly. Someone might yell at that person, right? Who's just a random person. And that won't seem like a kind act, but they may be acting on the behalf of other people on the train or whatever that don't like that music. They're kind of saying,
Yeah.
hey, like, could you not do this for
Get
the
it
greater
down.
good? But it could look like not kindness because they're sort of not letting this person kind of do their own thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, even in that kind of context, someone's normal mood that like even them not even they might not be thinking about other people. They might just be like, I don't want to hear this music, but they're actually acting as a voice for these other people that don't want to speak up about this.
Yeah, and I think that there is that nuanced discussion that can be had around kindness. There's levels of kindness. Do we a massive act of kindness to a huge amount of people is no more important than someone holding the door open for someone or for someone, taking 5 minutes to take some deep breaths. I think that I love speaking about this topic because I think we can go in so many directions on it. But if people want to be kind and uh, have a mindset that they want to be able to be kind to themselves and others, then they will find ways throughout their day to be kind. And yes, you're right. Something might be perceived as unkind, like setting a hard boundary. So saying no to someone might think that's unkind, but as long as it's done in an empathetic and clear manner, then to me that's kind because clear is kind. Just like Brené Brown says, clear is kind.
I love that. I think that's what a great little phrase there.
Mm.
Well,
It is.
well,
I've taken it into everything in my life, in work, in home, with my kids, with my partner, with friends, family, everything. If I'm very clear about what I do and don't need, and I'm very clear about the expectations, and I do it in a way that is respectful, then for me that's kindness because everybody knows where they stand.
I love that. You have kids as well, and so
I do.
we've got Marg here who's written in, who also has kids, and has written in this question: do you have any tips to introduce being kinder as a habit for kids in a way that prepares them well for work after school?
Oh, I love Marg. I love that question because I am such a keen advocate for helping our future leaders to become human leaders. And so, with our boys, we have instilled in them a very strong sense of self. So, to listen to their intuition, to if it feels off, it's probably off. You can do it in simpler ways for kids, but even making decisions, we let our kids make decisions and make mistakes. And I think that in that then helps them to learn to trust themselves. And that for me is a form of kindness because as they grow through life, often there will be times when people will say certain things to try and sway you, or peer pressure can become such a big thing in the teen years, which we're about to step into with our eldest. But I know when I look back on my life, if I had known to listen to myself more strongly and to be able to stand in a grounded manner in that, I probably would have thrived a bit more in my teens and 20s. And so, biggest piece of advice, help kids know themselves. The self regulation piece, I think if I had known how to name my emotions, that's a form of kindness too, because the more emotional literacy that we have in ourselves and that we can support our children with, the easier it will be for them to hopefully navigate conflict or to be able to explain feelings that are rising up in them. And so, if kids can have those hard conversations, stand strong in what they believe, have the empathy and the openness to and the curiosity to be able to listen to others' perspectives, but then still make sure that their whatever decision they're making sits well with them. And I just think in general as well, it's about caring about other people. I think kids intrinsically, generally, unless there's something that's really, really, really tough that's happened to them, they're just amazing beings. And I just think there's that piece that I wish we could take through into, as we grow into adults, where I don't know, it's this acceptance of other people. Everything as adults in society that we put onto kids shows us that differences are not, not the thing that we want to accept. And that, if you do something or say something, then, you may not be accepted. And so I know I'm going around in circles on this a little bit, but I just feel so passionate about if we can equip our kids with the skills to know themselves, stand in their own autonomy and strength, and then be able to hold space for others and listen to others and care about others, I think that that will equip them to be beautiful, kind human leaders as they go through life. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think just if we can just stay on the emotional literacy part of this a little bit, because I think it's an
Yeah.
important thing that people might be listening to and they might go, emotional literacy, how's that going to help me in the workplace?
Yeah.
But it's something that I've been thinking about a little bit more, sort of as I look at how it seems to me like I don't know if you're seeing this, but it feels like if you don't have some sort of element of emotional literacy, it can be easier to have other things influence you in
Yeah.
the way that, like, be it I'm feeling just really upset, so I need to have something to help me with that, or be it, I'm feeling angry and someone goes, this is what you should be angry at, and they're pointing you in a direction, but it's because you don't have a level of emotional literacy to kind of sort out what you're going through. It just feels like one big cluster of negative
Yeah.
emotion. So I guess I was just sort of staying on that. You've said you've had a bit of a journey of emotional literacy. Did you want to talk a little bit about that? Because it's such an important idea, and we actually haven't really talked about it too much on this podcast. So I'd love to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah, I think emotional literacy is something that really came to the forefront of my life when I was in my 30s and working in the sector that I work in, or the industry that I work in human resources. So often I would have people coming to me unable to express what they were feeling, or unable to have a conversation with somebody and explain to the other person what they were feeling, why they were feeling it, and how it was making them feel when they were having that interaction. So I was holding space for people and having to help them navigate potentially challenging conversations and situations. Through that as well, I think having children really brought up a lot of emotion in me. So there is a big journey that you go on when you have children, or you bring a child into your family, and you start to look at the way in which you're behaving and the impacts that your behaviors and your emotions, and perhaps your emotional dysregulation, which absolutely happens with everybody. I think if people say they don't get upset or angry at their kids, then I think they're probably probably lying. Um, but it's how we then navigate those interactions with our children and then become the best role models that we can for them. And I think that journey of combining my work, which had to have a very high level of emotional literacy, being able to name and talk about different feelings and emotions, and then having children that I then needed to and wanted to bring up in a way where they understood, oh, mummy's a bit angry today, but why is she angry? And what was the emotion that she felt when she was angry? And where did she feel it in her body? And so it's about having those I guess those reflective moments again, but together when you do it with kids and in a workplace. So you can even have those conversations, but in obviously a more adult manner when you're in a workplace.
Yeah, well, I love that. No, thanks for extending on that, because I think that's great, and it also harkens a little bit back to Mark's question as well there, which I think is
Yes.
good. We do have a lot of parents that listen. I was going to jump into Allegra's question here, and she's
Yeah.
written, "What should you do if your workplace doesn't prioritize kindness?"
Allegra, that's a good question. And I get asked that a lot. How do I be the kind person when my workplace doesn't care? And I think that there is a piece of ownership. So we have to take our own accountability on being the change we wish to see in the world. And I know that sounds like such a flippant way to actually describe it, but when we start to show up in a way that is how we want to see and experience the world around us, then invariably, I mean, there's actually a scientific basis to it. The kinder you are to yourself, the and the kind acts that you do in the world around you is actually contagious. And so it actually is uplifting, and speaking of energy again, like when you walk into a room, someone's, happy or optimistic or really genuinely looks you in the eyes and says, how are you? And then holds that space to actually listen to how you're feeling and genuinely cares. I think that there's a piece in, you're not going to change everyone. And I think it would be a bit unrealistic to think that everybody in the whole world is going to be kind and optimistic and happy, because that's just not reality. But I think that if we can show up as the best versions of ourselves in the interactions that we have, in the work that we do, we can create, even if it's the smallest ripple effect, even if it's just within our team, and create those moments of kindness. So there can even be micro moments of kindness. Offer to get someone a coffee. Even the other day I was in the office and I said to someone in the team, do you want me to go and make you a cup of tea? And they were like, oh my gosh, that would be so amazing. Thank you so much. And I was making my own cup of tea. So why wouldn't I offer at the same time? And then, to the end of that spectrum, someone going and volunteering in a place in the world that needs the extra support and the extra care. There's so many ways that we can bring in kindness into the workplace. And, my core of work is obviously kind leadership and bringing in work that helps support that, and frameworks and policies and procedures and practices within workplaces. But if you think that I'm so little, I'm on my own, what could I do? Start by doing little things for yourself that make you feel good, and then that will boost how you feel. And then you can start rippling that out into the people around you. And you'll soon see that people around you start feeling more uplifted when they're in your energy. But I think also being realistic about what you can and can't do. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think, we actually hear sometimes on this podcast, there's an interesting stat about how much a negative employee can affect a workplace. They can kind of almost sort of bring a cloud over the whole business just by having one employee that's kind of got a negative attitude. So
Yeah.
feels like sort of the opposite. You're kind of bringing a bit of sunlight in, it can
Yeah.
counteract maybe some of that negativity, or it can even just sort of create a better environment. So I think that, that's a great piece there. And that actually leads us sort of into our sort of final question here from Kanika, which is, were there any moments in your career where kindness could have helped a situation? I think, this could be someone that you've seen, a situation you've witnessed, or anything like that.
Oh, many of them, actually, if I'm honest. Yeah. Working in HR, you tend to see the best and the not so good in people and situations. And I think that I have often seen people, when they're under a lot of pressure, either at work or at home or a combined pressure, act in quite unkind ways. I think that there are people sometimes who are leading teams who perhaps don't see the humanness in the job that they require to get done. So they just see the accountabilities and the output and the expectations on what they want to achieve, rather than helping support the people throughout that process to then achieve that same outcome, but in a better manner. So I think when I say, are there any moments, I think there have been a lot of moments where I think kindness could have softened challenging situations, difficult conversations with people. I think it could have prevented people leaving workplaces that potentially didn't have to leave. But what's the old saying? We leave a manager, we don't leave a job. And so the kinder we are as humans, if you're in a leadership position, or if you're leading yourself, whether that's at home or at work or around kids, the kinder we are, and that choice that we're making to show up as that version of ourselves, the likely better outcome we're going to have, where either a resolution is reached more quickly, there's a better resolution, there is potentially less angst in the journey as people are traveling through it. So I think for me, if we look at it from an HR perspective, the, the thing that probably I could give the most advice on would be to show up in those difficult conversations, in those difficult interactions, in those times where things are really pressurized, and take a deep breath first, collect your thoughts, and instead of shooting from the hip, which sometimes people tend to do, or shutting down, which sometimes people do, showing up as a kinder, gentler, more space holding human. And I think that that would definitely have helped in those situations.
Well, Sophie, thank you so much for this. That's the questions for today, and it sort of leads us sort of right into some final thoughts here. And I've taken so many notes here. I've had a great conversation. I think you're because the thing that's great about this conversation is I can really understand how it all works. It
Yeah.
it starts with if I'm feeling too malleable, like I'm being pushed all over the place, then that's meaning that I don't have enough boundaries set up to sort
Correct.
of decide who I am. So the first thing to do there would be to find some free time.
Mhm.
That's just the first goal without
Yeah.
doing anything. Then from there, it's about trying to find clarity and also give clarity. So,
Uh-huh.
like this is what I expect and this is who I am. But that's
Mm.
obviously, I mean, I think that's going to be a slower process, but that is kind of, that helps you there. And then once you're able to do that, you're able to bring clarity to other people. So no matter how much conflict or something you're in with people, your clarity at least gives you your honestness, and
Mm.
that's kind.
Yeah.
That's so like that's kind of what I've
In
taken
a
away from
nutshell. I
today.
love
Yeah.
it.
um,
You got
because
it.
it's I think that's what's really good about it is that it's quite simple. There's
Yeah.
every part leads to the next part.
Correct.
So and it
Yeah.
can start so simply, which is really,
Yes.
it can even start with 5 minutes before bed if you're or if you're a late night person, be your late night time or early morning person, early morning time, whatever
Yeah.
works for you. No, I've just taken a lot away from this and it makes a lot of sense to me. So I think this is
I'm
really
so
good.
glad. I'm really glad because that's actually the basis of my framework. So I wanted it to make sense. Life is complicated enough. Let's not make it even harder to take care of ourselves, right?
That's it. And Sophie, they're my final thoughts. But did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation?
Oh, I've just really enjoyed it. I know we went on a few tangents. Apologies for that. That tends to be how my brain works a little bit. But I just really hope that people take away from today that it doesn't have to be rocket science. Being a kind human and being kind to yourself shouldn't be a real challenge. It can be something that you implement slowly in micro moments, in small steps, and then hopefully over time, they become the person and the human that they want to show up as in the world.
Well, that is a great, great lesson. And I think it ties everything nicely into a bow. Now, people will be listening to this and going, you know what? I need to reach out to Sophie. I need to get a copy of this book. So, where are the best places for them to do those things?
So I am a bit nerdy. I'm always on LinkedIn. So if anyone's on LinkedIn, then please, please connect with me. I don't like follows. I like connects because I
Mhm.
prefer human to human interaction. So please reach out to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram, but I do find Instagram a little tiring and I do tend to go down, a bit of doom scrolling on that as well. But I am on Instagram if they want to find me under my name. So both of those under my name. And if they're wanting to purchase my book, is that what you
Mhm.
asked? Yeah. So if they want to purchase my book, which is this one, you can't miss it when it's on the shelves. You can buy it at the moment on pre-order on any online bookstore that you purchase from, and then it will be in store in all bookstores and airports in July. So from
Very,
June 30 to early July.
very exciting. Well, everyone, go check that book out. Go reach out to Sophie. Thank you, everybody. Thank you all the team for writing in their questions. Thank you, Sophie,
Yeah.
for being a great guest and letting us go down some rabbit holes. That was great. And to everybody that's been listening and sharing, thank you so much. We've been growing very nicely. We, as I said, are now over episode 300. We're over 20,000 subscribers on YouTube. So thank you to everybody that's been sharing and to everybody that's been enjoying and listening to the episode, watching the episode. We want to say, have a magical week.